The concept of an early retirement has grown tremendously in the last decade. More and more Americans are not only stumbling into, but also planning on it from early in their careers. And even if you don't plan to retire early, I doubt you'd be disappointed if things sort of fell into place in a way that allowed you to do so. If any of these points of view describe you, then you need to keep in mind that many of the popular retirement saving methods aren't very well structured to support early retirement, at least not before age 60. For one thing, full retirement age for Social Security is now 67 years old, and you can't even file for early benefits until age 62, which is closer to when most people actually retire. Additionally, most tax-advantaged retirement accounts don't allow for penalty-free withdrawals until you reach age 59 and a half. So what do you need to do if you want to retire in your 50s or even earlier? In this video, we're going to walk through several options to fill in the gap years between your early retirement date and the time you reach age 59 and a half so you can begin tapping your retirement assets. As we go through the list, I'll hit each approach in the order that provides the most flexibility and monetary benefit to support an early retirement down to those that provide the least. The first one is 457 plans. Now, only 7 million Americans participate in 457 plans, but this relatively small group of workers has access to one of the best avenues for saving for early retirement that there is. 457s work similar to other common retirement plans like 401ks, TSPs, and 403bs, but they enjoy one very distinct feature. You can begin making withdrawals from a 457 plan upon your retirement, no matter what age that is. This is the only tax-advantaged account that offers this level of flexibility as a boilerplate feature of the plan. Now, another feature of 457 plans is that you can make maximum contributions to both a 457 and any of the other retirement plans I mentioned before, like a 401k, 403b, or Thrift Savings Plan. So 457s effectively provide savers with double tax-advantaged investment space, but with the added flexibility of earlier access to your retirement funds. Now, you should keep in mind that you have to retire from the employer that sponsors the 457 before you can make penalty-free withdrawals, unless you're age 59 and a half or older. However, if you have access to a 457 and think you might want to retire before age 60, you should prioritize contributions to these accounts to bake that flexibility into your retirement plan. The second account type is employer-sponsored plans. Now, you might be surprised to see standard employer-sponsored retirement plans next on my list. After all, I just pointed out that these plans don't enjoy the same withdrawal flexibility before age 60 that 457s do. And that's almost nearly entirely true. Now, before I explain, let me begin by pointing out the tax benefits these accounts provide, which can't be ignored. Whether you use a Roth or traditional 401k, 403b, or Thrift Savings Plan, having the option to either defer or permanently limit the taxes associated with these accounts can be worth a huge sum of money over your investing lifetime. So much so that you can't ignore them for the sake of early retirement flexibility. But back to the point I teased a second ago, there are a couple of ways to get into these accounts before age 59 and a half without paying early withdrawal penalties. The first and easier method is the Rule of 55. The Rule of 55 allows you to begin withdrawing funds from an employer-sponsored retirement plan, including the three that I mentioned previously, once you retire from the employer that sponsors that plan, assuming you retire at age 55 or later. Now, that was a bunch of words, so let me paraphrase. The Rule of 55 allows you to make penalty-free withdrawals from your employer-sponsored plan if you retire from that employer at age 55 or later. Now, another method is to use 72T distributions, which allow you to begin making withdrawals at any age, assuming you continue to do so until 5 years have passed, or you turn age 59 and a half, whichever occurs later. 72T distributions can be calculated one of 3 different ways, and once you pick a method, you have to stick with it until you meet the term requirements of the withdrawals. Now, with those general ground rules covered, let me say that I don't love 72T distributions because they can be challenging to calculate, and if you mess it up, you could owe some hefty penalties to Uncle Sam. Yes, 72T distributions exist. I feel obligated to point that out, but I would try nearly any other method I'm discussing in this video first. If you find the contents of this video helpful at all, please consider clicking like and subscribe below. That helps our channel to grow. It helps me to actually keep making videos like this and teach people about personal finance. The third account type is IRAs. Now, again, you may not have expected me to touch on an account type that has early withdrawal penalties in a discussion about early retirement, but once again, there are some workarounds. First, you can also make 72T distributions from IRAs. And since we've already discussed 72T distributions, and I don't love that method anyway, I'll share a different one. You may be aware that Roth IRA contributions can always be withdrawn tax and penalty free. Now, what you may not know is that funds that are converted from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA are treated like contributions after 5 years have elapsed. Therefore, by converting any traditional IRA funds to a Roth IRA, you effectively start a 5-year clock for that conversion. And once it runs out, those dollars are eligible for removal penalty free. And that's true no matter what your age is when you make the conversion. You do need to keep in mind that each conversion you make gets its own 5-year clock, so be sure you have a way to keep up with those conversions when you start. Also, you must have opened a Roth IRA at least 5 years before you withdraw any earnings from any Roth you have. This is true even if you're age 59 and a half or older. And if you don't already have a Roth IRA, I recommend opening one and just throwing $1 into it. That will at least start the 5-year clock for every Roth IRA you ever have from that point on, even if you close the first one. Now, the 5-year rule for Roths gets very confusing, so let me try to summarize those in a few bullets. First, you must have opened your first Roth IRA 5 years before you can make any withdrawals of earnings from any Roth, even if you're older than age 59 and a half. Second, each conversion you make to a Roth IRA must sit for 5 years before it is treated like a contribution and available for penalty-free withdrawals. There are also 5-year clocks for inherited Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks, but I'm not going to explain those in this video. If you want to read more about that, I've got some links down in the description below that you can follow. It's the 5-year rule, or I have a video version also, which I'll link above. The last account I'll discuss is taxable brokerage accounts. In case you're wondering, there are no highly specialized tax benefits for funds that are saved in a taxable brokerage account, though long-term capital gains and qualified dividends are taxed at lower rates than income. You can potentially save as much as 17% or more in taxes by gleaning income from these lower tax sources than from regular income. Beyond that, the primary benefit of using taxable brokerage accounts for early retirement is the flexibility they provide. For one thing, withdrawals from a taxable brokerage account can be made at any time without any penalty. That means if you retire before age 59 and a half, you could potentially use your taxable brokerage to fund the first years of your retirement until you're old enough to begin tapping the IRA or 401k. That isn't necessarily the case with the accounts we mentioned previously. The other important opportunity afforded by taxable brokerage accounts is the ability to finance Roth conversions that we discussed earlier. As I mentioned, each conversion is a taxable event. If you don't have available cash outside of your retirement accounts, you may have to cannibalize your Roth dollars to pay for the conversions. That is not a very efficient way to use those dollars. Finally, having a significant amount of money in a taxable brokerage account can give you access to cash while providing you with a high degree of control over your tax situation. So for example, your brokerage should allow you to select which lots of assets to sell from within the account. This gives you an option to sell off those groups of assets with large capital gains when you have room to absorb those from a tax standpoint, or to sell assets for below their purchase price when you want to harvest losses, and everything in between. Now, to maximize this tax control, you should hold assets in a taxable brokerage that aren't producing taxable income in the form of bond yields or dividends. It's just throwing off income and income taxes every time that happens. Try to focus on capital appreciation in the taxable space to maximize your tax control. In addition to the accounts I've discussed previously, you should also have a basic savings and checking account, but there's not a lot to say about that, so I'm not going to. If I were to identify the most important characteristic of early retirement planning, it would be flexibility. You don't know what the future holds, so you need to give yourself options to handle whatever life throws at you. After all, over half the time, people retire due to circumstances that are beyond their control, such as the loss of a job, a health issue, the health of a spouse or loved one, having to serve as a caretaker. There are lots of different things that force people into retirement earlier than they plan. We have lots more on our YouTube channel and website about early retirement and retirement planning. As always, we are grateful for your interest and your time. God bless and take care.